Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us again for this lovely podcast with this amazing person with us. We have a very special announcement for today that it just happens that today is also the first anniversary of Faiza's book being published, isn't it?
Or republished.
Republished, yes. So we're going to learn a lot of things about Faiza's journey into this book and how it has been something of a fruit of your
Soul.
soul.
I think, yeah.
So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, everyone. I want to welcome Faiza Taqi Hassan. She is a very, very, very good friend, best friend, and I love her energy. So I keep her close to me, and she's very special. So today I want to introduce her beautiful book, Dance of the Soul. She self-published it first, and then it was picked up by a publishing house in
In the
UK,
UK, yeah.
and then it was republished just exactly 1 year ago.
Right.
So congratulations
Thank
for
you.
this anniversary.
And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's always nice to sit and talk to you.
Thank you for accepting this invitation, and I really hope that I do let Faiza talk today.
I hope so too. Whenever Fatima and I get together, Fatima's the one talking. Believe it or not, for those of you who know me.
Yeah, thank you for that, Faiza. Alright, guys, so let's hop on to our podcast for today. We love to talk about the soul and the idea of love. And you're also, apart from being an author, you're also a Sufi healer. So I'm really excited to share with everyone what it means to be a Sufi healer as well. So as we go on in our conversation, we'll talk about that. And to understand this one person who has these two dimensions, perhaps we have many dimensions, but how and where do these two come together to give you this particular personality, this particular niche in your life around the work in soul and love?
So I think for me it all started a few years ago.
Mhm.
So I never started writing poetry to publish or to become an author, or I mean obviously I studied literature. It's like everyone's dream to publish that book, especially for those who are into reading and writing, and I never knew I had it in me. And my sister was always a writer, and she's brilliant. She's got such a gift. So I never thought that, I loved it. I was always interested in it. I love poetry, but a few years ago I was with one of my mentors, Sheikh Arif Abdul Hussain, and he was in Karachi doing some talks,
Okay.
and we had taken him to the beach, and I had all these pictures of different places of the world I had been to,
Okay.
and they were like, I had taken photographs of them and blown them up and put them on the wall, and I said, oh Sheikh, you have to come and see these pictures. And he comes and he looks at the wall and he looks at me and he says, Faiza, do you write poetry? And I said no, because all the poetries I remember writing were about my crushes when I was 16 and they were really like, I cannot publish those. But so I started laughing.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I don't. He said, go home and write tonight. And I just looked at him and I thought, oh my God, Sheikh. And I actually started writing. And this thing just opened in me, which I didn't know I had. And then, of course, there were a lot of people along the way, very few, very special people who saw that in me. And there were very, very selective people, you being one of them, who I used to share, my writing with. I didn't share it with a lot of people. And I think that this book is an ode to them as well, because they saw in me what I couldn't see in myself.
Wow.
And they brought that out in me, which I didn't know I had.
Wow. So, do you think that when a person experiences this kind of an opening in their life, they feel inspired to going out in the world and not only just sharing their treasures with everyone, but also to tell other people that go look inside you, there may be some things within you that you're not even aware of?
Yeah, for me, Fatima, it was very difficult to do this because this is exactly who I am on paper.
Okay.
This is my entire soul. This is like the ugly parts of me, the godly parts of me, well, if I can call it that. And when you write, right? Because you also journal, and you know that when you journal, it's whatever you are in a book, right? Because you don't expect people to read it. It's your soul on paper. And for me to voluntarily put that up was the hardest thing I could do.
So courage has many faces, and I think this was a very courageous thing for you to do. Right?
I never thought I could do it because this was all my thoughts, everything that.
So this book here is a face of your bravery, I think. Of you being brave
like that.
and being courageous to and being generous enough to share a part of you with everybody else. I think it's a very brave thing to do, and I think that when you were talking, I was thinking that we all have this soul within us that seeks to be free, to find that freedom, and perhaps it is caged within this, these fears that the body holds, fear of reputation, fear of what people will think, fear of being judged, so many of these fears, right? And then you kind of find a voice of God through someone who can nudge you and give you that courage to say, now it's time for you to come out of your cocoon and grow and show your wings and fly. And you mentioned that you travel and you have photographs. So I remember Sheikh Fazlullah Hairi, he speaks in one of his talks, and he says that the soul seeks to travel because the soul is free and it feels confined in one place, because soul is beyond time and space. So that's why we seek to travel. And I know that you travel. How has your traveling affected your work?
So coincidentally, a lot of I put photographs in the book of different places I've been to.
Let's see.
So I'll just randomly open it.
Yeah. So Faiza has put photographs that she has taken while traveling that are part of her book.
Okay, so that's just, if you can see that. It's just how different places in nature, whether it's the mountains, whether it's the trees, inspire me and make me aware of God's beauty, of His magnificence, of His glory. Everything that is in nature, right, is a reflection of Allah, and everything that is in nature is a reflection of His. In the Quran it says, right, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything praises Him. So when I go to the mountains in the north, for example, and I'm sure a lot of you have been, when you look and when you step out of the plane and you see these glorious mountains, you think, subhanallah, like everything is just praising Him and His magnificence. And I think that has inspired a lot of my poetry. So coincidentally, you had asked me to read, Fatima had asked me to read a few poems, and she said, okay, pick your favorite ones. And when I went through the book, first I couldn't believe I've written this, which is pretty cool. I don't know. One of Allah's names is Ya Mubdi, and that name makes you realize, right? It brings it back to Allah that everything that comes from you is actually not from you, it's from Him, right? Because, so even that name makes you realize that everything that pen to paper is all Allah.
Him working through us as well.
Him working through us, Him inspiring us, Him giving us the courage. So one of these poems, and I think that since we're talking about how nature inspires, it's called Starry Nights, and if I can just find it, I will show you. And so let me tell you a story about this while I find the book.
Okay.
Is that we were in Musa, and this was my first time there. And if you can find it over there.
I'm just looking.
I think it's on page 72. Okay. And we were, so we were in Musa, and we were in the mountains at night, and we were staying at this lovely hotel called Mountain Story.
Okay.
And and they use solar power, so it's, you know, a very energy friendly place.
Okay.
And we'd gone up to the roof and switched off the lights, and I have never in my life seen so many stars. And I mean, I saw 7 shooting stars. I'd never seen a shooting star before. I don't know how many of you have seen shooting stars, but I had never seen one.
No, I haven't seen.
And I saw 7, not only one, and it was just unbelievable. The sight, it was like God has taken glitter on his sky and sprinkled,
Beautiful.
you know, all these stars. So I'm gonna read
She's a
you.
fairy magic in her words.
So I'll read this to you. It's called
Yeah.
Starry Nights. Your canvas glitters so bright that it is almost impossible to capture. Only the naked eye can see it. Exposed and raw, complete, unadulterated beauty. Fairy tales and unicorns seem real. It is as though at that very moment, the entire universe, with all its hopes and dreams, covers the darkness, adamant to shine, defying the black, by sprinkling it with its magic. Thanking the forces above, there can be no filter. How is it even possible, I ask? And with a faint whisper, it replies, that, my friends, is what true love really looks like.
Oh wow, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's what her words do. I think they take. I always find that her words take me into a different world in my imagination, and it kind of becomes like a story I live through as you read from the beginning till the end, and then suddenly there's this, this climax to it where it ends with this beautiful, ending, which is not really an ending but a beginning to something special.
You know, so it wasn't always like that for me.
Okay.
So for me, my words have really helped me go through, and since we're talking about mental health,
Yeah.
and it's really helped me get through my darkest times.
Okay.
And the thing with my poetry, aside from one poem in the entire book, all of them, I used to write it whenever I would, I would feel like I was in a dark place, whenever I was really upset, and then leave it there, because I always wanted to bring it back to Allah.
Oh wow.
So if I couldn't complete it, and if I didn't feel like it had a positive ending, and if I just didn't want to, because I was just so angry and I just needed somewhere to vent, I would write it down, and then I would wait, and then sometimes maybe later that night, sometimes the next day, sometimes weeks after, I would go back, and I would always bring it back to God, because for me, Allah is that light in you and in me and in everyone that helps us shine, that helps us, that carries us, that guides us. And I think this is then where the Sufi healing comes in, because after I published this book, right, I thought, okay, now what? I mean, yes, I do write, and inshallah, whenever a book will formulate again, I will publish again, but I don't know when. Again, I always feel like I'm not the one writing it. It always comes from Allah, and in the meantime, I thought, okay, I can't. There's this light, there's this aching, there's this feeling of wanting to help, right? And then there are so many different types of people who help.
Right.
Like there are people who, like Hassan, my husband, who goes out and does things for the orphanage, and then there are people who, like you, who do this so that it helps people through your words, through your art. And suddenly I was having a conversation with my sister-in-law in Toronto, and she told me about this spiritual healing course. I didn't know anything about it, okay? I had no idea what it was, but
Right.
it just pulled me. I cannot explain to you how it just pulled me.
Okay.
And then I sat down with another friend of ours, Ravan, who explained to me about the course, and I was so drawn to it.
Right.
So the course is basically about how we take this light that we all have within us, Allah's light, and the light is within all of us, right? Because how can it not be? Because Allah has created us.
Oh, I haven't added you on that.
That's
It won't go live on my phone. Okay.
we can.
Yeah.
So how Allah's light is within us, right? And how through that light we heal. Through that light, through His names. The names are so powerful. The names are so everything that is in this earth, right? Even if it's a chair, and for us we think, okay, a chair is just
Yeah, I think it's a
a
non-living
chair.
thing.
It's a
That's what we
non-living,
taught in
living,
school.
mundane thing. It's living, non-living, right?
Yeah.
But everything goes back to Allah, even the chair, because the person who made the chair, to the wood that the chair comes from, to the plastic, to the, it's all got His essence, right?
Yes.
Everything, the vibration of the man who made the chair to that. So, if you have something that, an ailment or something that's physically or mentally wrong,
Yeah.
I mean not wrong, but something that is bothering you,
Yeah.
then as Sufi healers you train to use Allah's light
Mm-hmm.
through Allah's names and heal that within yourself.
Okay.
And I first and foremost am doing this for myself because actually we all have things within us that we need to work on. And I think that it's so important for people to realize that.
So I'm seeing a few things here, and I found it so beautiful that you were so real about your darkness, right? And when we talk about a Sufi healer, we feel like they're enlightened and they're like airy fairy levitating, and we wonder if they ever have those dark moments. Layman, people like us, I go through complete times you crash and you
Absolutely.
cry and you're broken and you're hurting, and then sometimes you fall and you make mistakes, and all of that comes in that hidden part of us that we're so afraid of seeing and looking. But they say that if light doesn't fall on that part of us, then that will eventually start to rot inside us. It cannot just stay there. It will start rotting, and it will start having its effects in terms of our outbursts or emotional upheavals or whatever, right? So the inner world, in the mystics' understanding, the inner world is the akhirah, is the life, which is the real life, the inner life, right? And when you talk about Allah's light, how do we take the inner light and then shine it on the inner world?
So I think for me, initially I used my writing to do that.
Okay.
And in fact, the book is basically divided into two parts, the breaking and the opening. So the
Wow.
breaking was my darkest times, the most desperate, the most painful, the most excruciating moments of my life, which
Okay.
I put down.
Mm.
And then the opening was when I finally got to a place where I realized the magnificence of God and how, in spite of all that, God is carrying me. Not to say, right, that you don't fall again.
Okay.
Not to say that, okay, you know what, Fatima, I'm here, I'm at this place and that's it, I'm done, I'm flying.
Yeah, like I reached the finish line.
I reached the finish line, because the thing is that Allah is so great and so magnificent and so beautiful that there is no limit, right? Because He is.
The journey to Him
I
is
mean,
infinite.
He is infinite, right?
Right.
So if He is infinite, then the journey to Him is infinite, and I think there's supposed to be 60,000 veils.
Yeah, I
Meaning
mean they go
if you
it's
have to give a number or whatever, right? And so I think every step is a journey further, and sometimes I feel that the higher you fly, the harder you fall.
Like they say, the closer you are to the light, the shadow is the largest.
But the beautiful part is that when you fall, you go even. If in that moment, right? If in that moment where you're on your, like the famous quote is that when you're on your knees, it's the best time to pray,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When you're down on your knees, it's the best time to pray. And it's the most, and I think that the reason that is because it's the most difficult time to pray, isn't it? When you're so broken, when your heart just hurts so much that and there is nobody but Allah.
Right.
You know, and in that moment you think that Allah, that there's only you, because nobody can help me, nobody can help me, nobody can.
I think if we become aware of certain inner aches and pains of that inner world, sometimes it's so lonely, because I think it's very easy for others to misunderstand us, and because others cannot understand. It's a very, very unique inner journey of oneness between Allah and us. We'll find ourselves in situations where we just can't even articulate those states sometimes. You know, we can't even. Sometimes we can't even understand ourselves, and we just end up saying, "Allah, I don't understand. I'm confused. I'm in doubt, and I hand over my situation to you. I hand over my heart to you." And I think that the most humbling moments are when you kind of understand I'm really nothing, and I really can't help myself. And you just get on your knees and you say, well, there's no one who can help me, there's no one who can understand me. I really don't know the situation and how to get out of it. And you just kind of run into His arms, right? The warm embrace of God. So was it always like this journey of love with God?
No, I mean, for me, I was always a very do good, stay away from bad.
Do good, stay away from bad.
And I thought that if that's how I lived, I would kind of get my goal to heaven, and that was my goal, right? And then and then there's this saying where if you pray to God, you pray for heaven, or you pray for Him, right? It's like a transaction based or a love based. And I think that moments in my life where I suddenly realized that I don't want anything but Allah, and that His love, because if you taste, you know, when you start doing dhikr and when you start reading His name, so dhikr is basically when you read Allah's names and you kind of go into a meditative state where you surround yourself with His light, which is again part of the Sufi healing. And of course you can do it even if you don't do the, if you're not like a healer, anybody can do dhikr, right? It's not really limited.
Yes.
But when you're in that state, and I think again the first time I did dhikr was with Sheikh Arif.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do it, and I thought, God, like he was staying with my house, and they'd organized a dhikr session at the house, and I was like, oh man, I really like, oh God, abhi karna padega, and you know, it's like formalities and like, oh, this guy's staying at my house and now I have to sit and do dhikr with him.
I bet he's really listening to you.
And then I was like, oh no. And then I sat down and I just felt my soul fly, and I had never felt that before. And that feeling, you know, it's like a lazzat that you feel.
A taste.
And you can't, and I feel like I use the Urdu word because it's such a sweet taste, right? It's like this euphoria that you feel, and you can't get it with anything else but God. And when we do this, we have a dhikr group, right? And we meet once a week, Fatima and I, with a few other really lovely ladies. And when Rizwani auntie reads this thing where it said, any love other than God, in it is pain, in it is grief.
Wow.
And that struck me so hard, because in the end, right, there is only Allah. In the end, it is only Him. It only is. Right?
Yeah.
So I want to read you something which showed my completely broken state.
So before we read, I just want to express how I'm feeling this really beautiful, romantic, poetic side of you. As it's like when you're talking, even I can feel your, personality full of this art. It's like your soul is in a state of performance when you talk. and I can sense this deep yearning for love. And they say that whenever we're yearning for something perfect and beautiful, we get distracted by things in the world or people in the world, but truly we're seeking the perfect.
Absolutely.
And the sooner we open our eyes to that, like you said, that any other love other than his is going to have pain and grief. And a lot of us will learn that with experience, with time. But it's a beautiful Sufi path. It's the path of love to God that can start to unveil this kind of experiences. So please, let's hear.
Okay, so this one is called The Light. There is a darkness that engulfs me. Amidst the trembling fingers, the pounding head, the eyes swelling up with tears, and the heart that breaks, is a soul in limbo, shattering again and again, lying in a place of nothingness, longing to hang on to any semblance of hope. A state of despair one is all too familiar with. Rise above it all, erase it, until the reflection shows only light, breathes only light, dances in the night. Erase it all, the fear, the anxiety, the dread, for the light is there, aching to break free. Let it go and see yourself soar once again.
Wow, let it go and see yourself soar once again.
So this was naturally one of the times where I was really upset, and through it all, the realization that Allah is there, because the light is Him, the love is Him, that He is the one holding you, that He will never leave you, is the reason why I decided to go through this Sufi healing journey. Because I wanted to learn more, I wanted to practice more. And then of course, when you're in a course and when you're doing it formally, there's more of like a discipline to it. Of course, anybody can do it. Yeah, I'm not saying that you need to just do this course to become, to be able to experience Allah's light at all.
Right.
Just for me, I felt that for me to be disciplined in this, and okay, to know, okay, Faiza, every Thursday there's going to be a class, and you have to do your homework and you have to practice. And then we have healing partners, which is really cool because she's this girl from Ireland, and so everybody who's in this course is like either like an Ayurvedic, practitioner, or is some sort of like shaman, or and they're not all Muslim, which is again really interesting because you see it from a whole perspective versus the tunnel vision, which is what. And of course, because I am Muslim, I find it easier to be able to recognize the terms and
names of God.
Yeah, and when they read the Fatiha, I said, "Oh, of course we know that."
Yeah.
But the thing is that you can still do it. It's all in you.
Wow.
The light, the love.
So we're going to come back to this light within us, but I have two things to share, and I want your input on that. One is that, when we go through dark moments, we kind of want to erase them. We want to let go of them. We don't want a memory of it. We don't keep photographs from bad moments. We don't take photographs in bad moments. In fact, this is what we see on Instagram, right? That
it'd be very strange if you put on like a camera and the funeral and said, "Let me take a selfie."
Well, yeah, that would be weird, and very morbid sense of. but yeah, she's also taught me some sense of humor. I struggle with that.
Yeah, very morbid sense of humor.
Yeah. So we run away from pain. That is our intrinsic nature, right? And we don't want to make a record of our dark memories. But I see something really, really awesome here with your poetry is that every time you talk about your heartache and pain, you say that you would wait for your work and you would give it time, and then you would bring it back to Allah, and then you would end it with a positive note. And I'm finding that extremely transformative because there is a record of your pain, So you remember where you started and what you've been through, so you don't forget all your struggles and what you're made of. There's a celebration of the scars here, and there's almost like an eulogy to embracing the darkness, and then bringing it to oneness with Allah and the light. So the yin and the yang and the light and the dark seem to be coming together in your work.
In fact, I've written about that a lot as well.
Okay.
About how we need the darkness to complement us, because if we didn't have the darkness, how would we know what light is, right?
Right.
So if you don't know what darkness is, you don't know what light is. If you don't know what bad is, how do you know what good is? And vice versa, right?
And you value, Ibn Sina says you only value health when you fall sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I always lived in like this gorgeous place with an ocean and and greenery, how would I know what other than that was?
Or
right?
what value it holds.
What value it had, exactly.
So, so I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of the guilt and shame we hold within us, and it becomes a very important part in our mental health, in our spiritual health, in our emotional health. The reason I say mental health and spiritual health is because guilt and shame become a motivation for us to adopt certain characteristics. So it's affecting our mental health, but at the same time, in spirituality, these aspects of guilt and shame usually end up taking us away from God. And how do you talk about these ideas in Sufi healing, and what is the place of embracing our shame and guilt in this work?
For the longest time, for me right now, the name Ya Ghaffar is coming because it shows us that name of Allah, which forgives the biggest sin that we have, or we think we have made. And I think to Allah it's not. So I think that the way I see it is to Allah, the sins we have committed, right? And in our perception and in His perception,
Okay.
is different.
Okay.
Because I feel that in our perception, we have done something wrong, right? We are sinners, we will never be forgiven. And to Allah, it's not, it's come to me. No matter what you've done, come to me. He will always embrace you with open arms. And I think that perspective really changed for me. So from a God that was angry and wanted to punish me and wanted to, throw me in hellfire, to a God that just wanted to embrace me in His arms. And when you commit a sin, or whatever is in your view is a sin, only takes you away from God, right? So it only creates a veil in your heart. It's not anger, for instance, right? If I am angry or I am jealous, the anger and the jealousy only creates a veil in my heart. It only brings me further from God. It doesn't bring God further from me.
Right.
So He is always there. He is always there. He's in you. He's right here. It's just that sometimes what happens when you have a veil? You can't see.
Right.
And the thicker the veil is,
Sun is always there. We can't see it.
yeah, the thicker for instance, if you're wearing like clear glasses, you can see the sun. But if you're wearing shades, it kind of creates a barrier, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing, that when you commit a sin, it's not that God wants you to get away from Him.
No, of course.
It's that you feel that you are not worthy for His love. But, and here's the thing, that sometimes, and I think we discussed this, right? That sometimes we do things that humble us.
Yes.
Because sometimes, we think, oh my God, we are flying, we are,
So good. I'm
so
enlightened.
good, I'm enlightened, I have the light within me.
I'm emptier than you.
Nothing can faze me, and then something happens.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, is this really me?
Yeah.
Is this really me? And that is such a humbling experience,
Yeah.
because when you recognize, there is, the feeling of recognizing that quality within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I am a bit jealous. You know what? I do get angry. You know
Okay.
what? I feel these things, and Allah help me. Allah help me get over this, because after all, we are human. We will make mistakes. We are not infallible, right?
Yes.
That only lies for Allah. So if we realize that yes, we're human, it doesn't give you a carte blanche to say, oh, you know what, now I'm gonna just go and do everything, because
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Right.
saying that the sins that we do or the mistakes that we make just make us human, but also humble us and also give us a way to come closer to God. Because you are never going to, and of course there are those people, who are always in shukr and who always say Alhamdulillah, even though whenever they're in good times and they're in bad, but more often than not, we are praying because we are in difficulty. We are praying because we are in hardship. We are praying because we need Allah. And not once will Allah say, hey, you know what, you only come to me when you need me.
Wow, that's the beauty of God, right? वो
That's
जताता नहीं है कभी भी,
Not like us.
Yeah,
not like humans where we're like, oh, but she only came to me when she needed something.
Right. And He keeps saying, come and ask me, and ud'uni astajib lakum. And they say that Allah is like the Wi-Fi, it's always there and open, and you just need to have the right password. And sometimes so what is sin then? Because
It's a veil.
a veil between the lover and the beloved.
A veil between you and Allah. And I think that the more
And the separation from the beloved is the true pain
that's
in
the
itself.
separation.
That's
That's the angst, that's the wanting, the greed, the lust, that thing in my heart, that the lack, the discontentment.
right.
Because you're always feeling like you're wanting more, you're wanting more, you're wanting more, you're wanting
The
more.
inner static, the inner fuzz of not feeling at peace
Not
and content.
feeling like it's enough.
And
I think that's a huge, like Sheikh says, right? Like hell is here and heaven is here.
right.
It feels like that.
It
Because
does.
when you're jealous, when you're angry, don't you feel that fire within yourself?
Yeah.
Like that burning?
Yeah.
And that's hell.
Yeah. So Buddha has this amazing saying that was very life changing for me. He says, "You're not punished for your anger; you're punished by your anger." And while there is a real reality of experiencing the akhirah and the hereafter and heaven and hell, for the Sufi, there is an awakening that needs to take place within this reality. And the Holy Prophet says, "Die before you die." And Imam Bakr says that when you will die, you will as if wake up from a dream, and you will say, "Oh wow!" Right? So for the Sufi, that awakening happens in this reality, awakening to us.
And they also say that death is, they celebrate it, right? It's like your wedding day, because it's
Yeah,
your union with your beloved. And I think that's so beautiful, because we always see death as a really sad thing, right?
Yeah.
And we always see death as this and we don't realize that death is just another step towards the beloved.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my absolute, I have quite a few, but one of my absolute favorite poems that I'll find it, but
Yeah, let me find it for you. You know the name.
it's called Death.
Okay.
And this poem was written when I was in London,
Okay.
and I had just heard about Sheikh's sister's passing, and I didn't know her, I didn't know anyone, but somehow that feeling of the fact that the soul was so at peace,
Okay.
that his sister was completely at peace, and I just wrote,
Wow.
and I had, so I'll read it to you. So it's called death. The inevitable truth of birth is the eternal abode. The prologue of that is your life has come to pass, and the great narrative is now about to begin. And as you are lowered down, do not be afraid. When the tear-stained faces bid their final farewell, and anticipation creeps in at what lies ahead, certainty has made its mark, sure enough as the etchings on the tombstone. But what was pales in comparison to the glory that will be. Savor the story from my friend, for the best is yet to come.
Wow.
So
Wow, I mean, I didn't know someone could write so beautifully about that.
it's for me completely changed my perception about death, because for me suddenly the fear, because we always feel like, oh my god, Malikul Maut will come and this will happen and that will happen, and you know what can be better than going to your beloved Allah? What can be better than having that one veil removed of this body?
Right.
Because in the end we are all souls, right? The souls are what's going to last.
Yes.
The souls is what's going to go forward, right? It's just a transition, and I really truly believe that even though we are attached, right?
Yes.
Fatima, I think that's the most important lesson I have learned in all these years, is to detach from everything, whether it is your kids, whether it is your money, whether it is your beauty.
The Quran says you will be tested with malu banun.
Yeah.
Mal wal banun, right? That your children and your money will test you.
And how you're going to go to a second childhood, and how everything is going to wither away, right?
Right. It's also taking me into this another discussion about death, which is the death of the old self, where the new has to be birthed. Rumi says that if Mary didn't go through the labor pains, then Jesus would not be born. And one of the writers, he explains in his book that it is about the journey of everyone's soul, and each one of us will go through phases in our life which almost feel like a death, and you have to enter a realm of not knowing what the future holds, but you kind of have to jump off the cliff, and you have to just have faith, and you have to have faith in Allah holding you into this new you that has to be birthed.
So almost like a caterpillar and a cocoon and the butterfly.
Yes, and I know butterflies are your favorite. So tell us a little bit more about this metamorphosis. What is this for the Sufi?
Well, it was very interesting because last summer I was in Toronto, and I actually witnessed the whole metamorphosis process.
Whoa.
So my sister-in-law, Wajiha, she's really into, she's really incredible. She gets these eggs, and then she has these like little containers where you watch the entire process from the egg to the egg becomes like a
egg of a butterfly.
Egg of a butterfly, monarch butterfly.
Okay.
Which is an endangered species.
Okay.
And it becomes like a tiny caterpillar to a tiny worm type thing to like an actual caterpillar where you can hold.
Okay.
And then you put leaves inside this box, and the caterpillar will eat the leaves, and suddenly you will see the caterpillar climbing up.
Okay.
And a cocoon, like an actual cocoon will form, and the cocoon looks and feels like spider web.
Okay.
Like a spider web. Then suddenly, you're waiting, and suddenly you will see these beautiful, colorful wings. It pokes out first.
Okay.
And then after it pokes out, you see this stunning, beautiful, yellow and black butterfly, and the butterfly is attached. So it's still drying its wings. So even though the cocoon has come out, it's still not ready to fly.
Okay.
It dries its wings, and then you release it, and then it flies into this. So the whole process was so magical. And I think for every one of us, right, we have to go through that metamorphosis process again and again, because we are always being reborn into another version of ourselves.
Wow.
And that And I think I was reading somewhere today that how that nobody realizes how much that cocoon phase is so important.
Right.
Because when you're a caterpillar, fine, you don't know any better, you're young, you're small, but when you go into your cocoon, is when you are actually maturing, is when your wings are forming, is the whole journey happens within the cocoon itself.
They say the journey is more important than the destination.
Absolutely, and how the whole journey happens within the cocoon, because that's when your ache, your pain, you're trying to break free to become this beautiful butterfly.
Wow.
And for me that was like, oh, you're right.
So you think that the soul goes through that kind of a cycle again and again?
Yeah, I think that the soul will go through it again and again until we continue our journey. I think that people may not be aware. So what's important is the way you react when you're on your knees, and the way you react when your soul is going through that journey, because that very thing may take you away from Allah. Okay. Right? So when something happens to me, I may say, you know what, God always does this to me and it's not fair, and not again to say that that reaction is also normal, right? Because again, Qabid and Basit, we always go through construction and expansion. Yeah, we always go through that.
So the tightening and the constriction and the fear and the anxieties and then the expansion and the reliance and the faith, they're both connected. Like the breathing of the chest that expands and contracts, like the Qabid and the Basit.
Yes, that's it.
And so that cycle of light and dark, constriction, expansion keeps happening with the soul
until the soul moves on.
And if the soul can awaken to that.
So again, right, some people are more aware of it than others.
Right.
So some people are more aware of the light and the dark, some people are more attracted to the dark, some people are more attracted to the light.
Right.
You know, it just depends on what your intention is in this journey.
Right.
I really, really strongly believe that if you make that intention, right? If I say, you know what, Allah, I want to go closer to you, help me. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to, sit on your Janamas for hours. You don't have to, you just have to make the intention. You just have to want it.
So
that's it.
I think this is reminding me, I think this will be almost the last part of our talk, but it's so essential to a Sufi's journey. It's reminding me of the journey of Hazrat Musa with Hazrat Khizr. And what I want to talk about here is that Musa was asking for God constantly, right? And he was saying, I want to see you, I want to see you, I want to see you. The liqa Allah, the vision of God. And then we see that Allah guides him to a teacher. And he's saying, yes, I want this teacher, right? And when Musa comes to this teacher, the teacher says, no, you're not ready, you won't be able to handle me. And he keeps saying, yeah, I will. And at every step, Khizr does something very extraordinary, which doesn't make sense to Musa, right? So, in my experience, and I want to hear this from you as well, that do you think that after a certain stage in this journey of seeking God, the world leaves its, sensible understanding or sensible construct, and then a higher reality opens itself to you where you might have experiences which are making you godly, but from the world's perspective, they're absolutely extraordinary or nonsensical or just beyond comprehension, because what Khizr is talking about is not making sense to Musa, but there has to be a surrender to that nonsensical.
So I think that the world loses its glitz and glamour, because I think that things that normally appeal to people just don't appeal to you, and then I think things start happening.
Okay.
And
what do you think start happening?
I've shared a lot of this stuff with you, but you start having dreams, or you start having, when you do dhikr, when I do dhikr, I have these visions, and I sometimes think, am I imagining things? Is it really happening? And you always have to listen to that inner like I like to say, inner Allah that's in you, right? Like, because Allah is always in you.
Right.
You always have to listen to that inner voice within you that you know. Hearts and heart, you know what dream actually meant something, what inner voice is trying to tell you. That I think that inner voice starts to open in inner world, because again we have a whole universe within ourselves, right?
Yes.
And this entire universe that is there's so many things that are happening that we are not aware of, just because we choose not to be. Not because it's because someone had said once that I'm so happy with just making money, doing good work, and going to bed at night.
Right.
And that is their journey.
Right.
We're not judging again, right? Because that's not up to me. If that they are happy with that, so be it.
Right.
But again, like I said, it goes back to the intention. If you want more, if you want to more,
if you want your soul to
if you want more,
that
and
ecstasy,
if you want to go on the journey,
right, unveilings, manifestations,
then make the intention and watch magical things happen.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I feel like this journey in the end becomes about a journey of finding that trust in the inner voice.
Absolutely.
And not just finding the trust to trust that voice, but also become honest with yourself. To be honest. Because when the voice comes, I think a lot of us do hear it. A lot of us hear it in different ways. Someone is being forced to marry someone, but the heart is saying something else. Someone is being forced to take up a certain profession due to pressure, but their heart says something else. To move one country or the other, in so many things, right? Everything is part of that actual journey. So I think to be honest and say, honestly, this is what my heart is saying.
Fatima, very recently something happened.
Okay.
Right, an incident happened, and my inner gut was saying something, and it was screaming it. And it was screaming it, even though the people around me were screaming something else.
Right.
I chose to listen to my inner gut,
my
voice, and I told Allah, listen, you gotta help me, man, because that's how I talk to God.
Yeah, I love it.
It's like my bestie. So, and I said, listen, you have to help me, and I promise you, Allah gave me such a huge hey Faiza, do this.
Wow.
Don't do that, and I listened.
Wow.
And I cannot thank Allah enough. I cannot thank Allah enough, because it has just saved me.
Wow. Wow. This guidance is real, isn't it? And you can sometimes feel it as a tug in your heart.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Faiza, for your really, really calming, inspiring, magical time, energy, conversation.
I think we can go on like this forever.
I know, and I feel so fortunate to have her in my life. I'm lucky. And it's like, your book or your healing work or your life or your decisions or the voice, it's like an inspiration. It comes from the spirit. It's in spirit. So thank you so much, and I hope
thank
you all
for listening.
And inshallah we'll have more of these beautiful conversations in future. Thank you all for listening, and keep us in your prayers. It's a beautiful Friday. Until next time, take care. Allah Hafiz.